Hello, Swamjit, Indrajit.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon.
sir.
Good evening. Good evening. और क्या होना आया? बीटेक की क्लास अभी खत्म हुई?
Yes, sir.
हो गई?
Attendance is going.
अटेंडेंस भी होती है क्या?
It's taking our only.
So how does he take roll number wise?
Yes, sir. He's calling the names, and
Okay.
we have to respond present or yes, sir.
I think we have a feature doing that already in this. Anyhow. Welcome guys. Welcome guys. Come quickly. Good evening guys. We'll just wait few more minutes so that everyone from the BTech batch can join, and whoever is left from other batches. So just few minutes, we will start the second lecture today. Is Abhishek able to come today? Abhishek Vaidya? No, not yet. Ah, he's there. Okay. Abhishek? Hello, Abhishek.
Yes, sir.
Now net is okay? Everything good there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, guys. I think we can start. 34. Okay, a few more minutes, a few more seconds. We'll just begin. Okay, class, let's begin. Good evening. So we are going to begin second lecture of the rock slope technology. Today we will be discussing about the principles of slope stability. Last time you will remember we introduced the topic and we discussed about what kinds of slope are there. Some points on what are the factors that are seen when designing a slope, some things about stability, how factor of safety helps in that, and also about what are the basics behind the slope and how an engineer approaches that. Today, what we will be doing is we will be moving ahead from there, and we will be seeing what are the factors that are affecting slope stability. So, ranging from geological to geometrical, rock mechanics or soil mechanic wise, or some other external factors. We will be discussing those. We'll be we'll be moving on then to some judgment criteria on what basis we say slope is stable or unstable. So what are the factors or what are the ways in which we can decide, okay, the slope is said to be unstable or it is safe. So we'll be discussing some of those, and then we'll be moving on to the concept of factor of safety. We'll be discussing more about that. And we'll be also discussing uh, about how it can be calculated very simply using some assumptions and some simple calculations for a simple sliding type of example. So let's see how much we can cover in that, and then we'll move on to some question answers which you guys may have. Okay. Okay, so factors that affect the slope stability. One of the important factors when we talk about anything related to mining or related to anything related to ground, earth, basically, the first thing that comes into mind is the geology of the region and how these things behave. And one of the major parts of it is of a rocky strata is what kind of discontinuities are there. Now, discontinuities may be many types. They can be in form of simple joints. So they can be fractures, fissures, folds. They can be faulted joint planes. There can be a big gap in that. There can be infilling material, or there can be other features that are intruded inside. So there are a lot of ways in which geological disturbances play an important role. However, considering a single rock type, one of the major factors, geological factors that affect the strength and the overall stability of that rock is joints and other and related discontinuities. So even joints have various parameters, like what is the spacing between joints. So if you can see this figure, there are you can see some joint sets that are there, and there are certain regular spacing between them. And this kind of regular pattern of joints is called a joint set. So here we can see one joint set that is maybe dipping at around 60 degrees from horizontal. Similarly, there can be multiple joint sets as well. If two joint sets are intersected, maybe one horizontal and one vertical, they can form blocks, and those becomes more unstable because now the rock is in form of blocks, and if you expose that rock, blocks will fall off, and that can lead to something called rock fall or a full block failure or toppling failure that we'll be discussing sometimes. Uh, Apart from spacing, there are aperture. So aperture means how thick or thin the gap between that joints are there. Then there is persistence. Persistence basically describes how deep or how continuous the joint is. The joint can be intermittent. So maybe in a 10-meter rock, 10-meter long rock, if the joint goes on, it may be sometimes just a few meters starting in middle, it is intact, and again, few meters later it is there. So persistence basically gives you an idea of how continuous the rock and the joint is. The higher the persistence of a joint, the greater is the problem in terms of stability, because it creates a full plane through which failure can happen. Then again, there is surface roughness of the joint itself. So in between the joint, there can be the surface can be very smooth, as in case of some of the rocks which have glossy structure type, or it can be very rough, that mostly sometimes in sandstone or limestones these are seen. So based on what kind of roughness, how rough the surface is, the overall stability of that rock mass will change. More roughness will basically increase the resistive forces that will avoid any movement of the rock body itself. uh, very smooth surfaces may actually do us more harm. So smoothness basically eases the movement of the rock. So roughness is a big parameter of joints. Again, the infilling material, what kind of material is in between these joints? Sometimes joint may have no infilling material. Sometimes joints may have some cementitious infilling material that can actually give more strength to that rock. Sometimes joints may have a soil type of material that can actually create further smoothness and further sliding surfaces that can increase the chances of failure. So what kind of infilling material are there, and what is the orientation? One of the very important part as in terms of slope stabilization. So if a joint is oriented towards the face of the slope, how the failure can happen. If the joint is oriented against the slope, will that be the same failure? So this understanding is also very important, and especially when we as mining engineers, when we go into the open cast mines, we create artificial slopes in form of pits and dumps. So not in specifically in dumps scenario, but especially in pits when we make benches and a whole pit with benches and overall pit slope, we have to see what is the orientation of natural joints that are there. Uh, we can't be designing a mine that mine slope that will be actually oriented along the failure planes or the fractures or joint sets, because that will basically create much more instability and much more harder to control when we go deeper and deeper into the mines and the slope sizes increases. So even when we design the mine, so in mine design, mine planning stage, the geological features, the orientation of joints, all this matters a lot. And that's why I say when mining, we have to be knowing many number of aspects, many number of sciences and technological aspects, just not limited to how things are planned or how we can do certain amount of production. But we have to understand how things behave, how a joint can behave, how a rock can behave when it fails, and so many things more. So based on orientation, if we see, uh, if a material or if a block, suppose uh, it 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 has to slide, the only and simple condition is the total amount of resistive force should be less than the total amount of forces that are inducing it to slide. So condition of slide for a natural block on a sliding surface becomes very simple. It becomes if the angle of the slope is more than the friction angle, if and other resistive forces are not there, that block will slide. So in terms of a block on a slope model, we can understand how failures can happen in a natural slope as well. So taking some cases of failure based on geological orientation, we see these cases where uh, orientation of the joints with respect to the slope of the plane. So these examples are or these figures are something like a mountain slope is cut to basically make a road that we can see on the bottom right side. And in order to do that, there are different geological conditions. So what we are seeing are what will happen and what kind of failure can happen with different geological orientation of the joint sets or discontinuities. So in first case, you see basically the joints are daylighting on the this on the face of the slope. And this basically is the most common way in which a block type of failure can happen. You can see the blue block or the bluish block that you can see can easily fail along that side. The angle of orientation, the angle of dip of these planes, the joint planes, is much less as compared to the face of the slope. And orientation as well as the angle, both of these things combined defines how the failure can happen. So in this case, the first case, that is A, the orientation is dipping towards the face, similar to the slope face, but the angle is much more. So it's basically, in this case, this kind of case is called daylighting. So when the sun rays that come on any material. So something on these lines, in geological terms, it's called daylighting. When angle is less, angle of the joints is less than angle of the face. So and that kind of failure can happen. In the second case, you see the orientation of joints is parallel to the face of the slope, and this is again another classic case where quite good amount of failure can happen, and especially sheets of rocks can basically fall apart in layers and layers, because orientation of the joint basically dictates the sliding plane. And when we understand how the sliding happens, and if in turn the friction angle of these joints is when it is exceeded, so failure the chances of failure increases. And in this case, sheet failure or layer failure can easily happen in this case. Third case, you can see there are two sets of joints. One is oriented similar to or parallel to the face, while the other is oriented perpendicular or in the opposite direction or of the face. So in this case, if you see closely, the persistence that we were talking about, the continuity of the joint, that is less, and that is basically ensuring some amount of safety to this structure. However, there will be some blocks that will be formed due to the two or multiple sets of joints. As we were talking about, that when multiple sets of joints intersect, they basically form blocks. And that kind of failure can happen. And this is a very common failure again in Himalayan terrain, where new roads are being made these days, especially in Jammu Kashmir area and even in Uttarakhand. If you go towards Badrinath and Kedarnath route, this kind of joint patterns, two sets of joints, even three sets of joints are present, and multiple sets of joints create multiple kind of blocks. And the most common type of failure happens is what is called a rock fall. So in rock fall, what happens is a piece of rock or a block of rock basically fails. The whole slope is not failing, but that is again a type of failure that can create huge damage to whatever is lying down. And in this case, if a road is cut like this and vehicular movement is going on, so rockfall is as dangerous as any of the landslide or other type of failures that can happen in this case. So again, there are different type of preventive measures for that as well. There are some roping, the rope nets are applied, some bolting is done sometimes based on what kind of loose rocks are there. Or even there are catchment areas where some area on the hillside of the road is basically left, and there are protection measures that are put in case a block failure happens that can hold it there. So there are various protection and stabilization measures that we will keep on discussing for each and every case later on. But yeah, this kind of failure is very prevalent in mountainous or Himalayan terrain, if anyone has an opportunity to go there. Coming to the D part, in this the orientation, even though it is against the face, but it's very close to 90 degrees or just perpendicular to the surface. And what that makes is basically a sort of a toppling failure. So if with respect to hanging of the rock, if it starts fracturing like you see in this case, when joints are basically uh, almost close to vertical, and due to this orientation that is against the slope, against the face of the slope, basically the rocks start toppling on one over the other. And this kind of failure, when it happens, it's also called toppling failure. Toppling failure is a separate branch of study. Sometimes because the dynamics of toppling failure are different from uh, similar dynamics of, suppose, a circular failure or a planar failure that we'll be discussing later. So toppling failure again has very many factors that affect it. What is the joint orientation? That is obviously much more important, but more important than that is what is the height of individual blocks, what is the relative size of each of these blocks, what is how much separation is there between each block, and can they basically uh, toppling is defined basically when one forces the other and the other forces the next one, so that there is a uh, domino type of effect that can fail it. So uh, in to achieve that condition, and there are many other factors that come up, and this again uh, is very easily visible when we are planning for a road cut like this. But again, different stabilization measures are there for this kind of cut as well. Coming to later on, so this in this we can see the the figure E. In this, there are horizontal beds. So this kind of a formation generally we see like typical formation of shale and sandstone, where the middle layer, that is shale, is very friable and slowly and gradually it erodes as much more as compared to the sandstone. And when it erodes, it basically creates a cliff or a hanging structure, where if the joints are present, they can easily fail, and a block sort of, or a large piece of land can basically fail off in that sense. So these cases as well are found in typical strata, where sandstone and shale or some other mica sort of uh, materials are present. Especially in coal fields, the typical strata of coal, sandstone, and shale is often present. And if we are doing open cast mining in that sense, sometimes this kind of scenario comes up. But in mining scenario, because it is a very dynamic process, uh, the rate of erosion is very slow as compared to the rate at which we mine things out. So that in those scenarios, we basically can control in a easier way. But in case where permanent structures such as roadways or railways are there, and we have to cut similar this kind of a strata, so in that cases, things have to be taken care, because there is no relative movement of the land structure, and natural erosion can take place. And oftentimes that the gap that is very easily visible in this figure is not that easy to see from naked eye, because that will be covered in vegetation. And more often than not, what happens is this whole outer slope area is basically covered in vegetation, and the erosion that is taking place is often hidden to the naked eye. And when failure happens, then it is apparent that, oh, that kind of failure that has occurred. So this is another example of how orientation of the joints matter. And the figure F basically is a representation of all other types of failures that happen when where very friable rock is there, there are multiple joints and very closely spaced joints are there, or the material is so friable that it can be basically equated to a soil kind of or a debris kind of failure. So generally it goes for shallow circular failures. The plane is circular, generally doesn't follow a particular plane, or it may be a compound type of failure where there is some circular part and then it can follow some planar failure as well. So when material or the rock strata is such friable, basically a flowing or a circular type of failure happens. So that's how, just by the orientation of the joint structure or the geological discontinuities, things can change, things differ so much. So apart from geology, there are many other factors. Let's come to them one by one. Uh, Coming to the geometry, geometry is one of the major obvious aspects which defines uh, how stable the slope is. Very intuitively, we see a higher slope uh, creates more risks in terms of stability than a lower slope for the same inclination. Similarly, more higher inclination or larger angle of slope can be much more tough to keep it stable as compared to a gentler slope or a slope that has been cut or modified to become overall less. So in the same concept, when we talk about in our mines, we this is a typical slope of a mine or a bench structure of a mine. So we can see here even the height. We have two or three different components in terms of dimensions. We have pit depth, which is the total depth that we are seeing of a pit. We have individual bench heights, which are uh, mostly dependent on what kind of structure or what kind of equipment we are using. So if we are using some sort of excavators that can reach just 10 meters or 15 meters height, so we don't want to many times we don't want to increase the bench height that can go beyond that, because excavating or maintaining the high bench height or maintaining the angle of these benches becomes very difficult if your equipment can't reach beyond that height. So bench height are often dictated by what kind of equipment we are using. Bench width based on what kind of structures again are there, and what uh, overall slope you want to keep. Pit depth obviously is calculated when we design the slope, how far the ore is, how deep we can go, at what rate we can go, what is the ultimate pit limit, and other factors. So in terms of angles also, you can see in this figure, there are three different angles we say. When we say a slope angle in terms of mines is a very different a very different term as compared to what we see in regular civil constructions or other civil features. So in our mines, we have overall slope angle. We have inter ramp angle, which is difference between this one ramp or haul road to the toe, or between two ramps maybe. And we have individual bench face angles. So individual bench face angles often are again dictated by the geology of that area, what kind of uh, orientation of rock joints are there. So in terms of that also, sometimes we have to adjust our bench angles, bench face angles. The size of the ramp is often defined with respect to what kind of heavy earth moving machinery we are using. If we are using large dumpers and we want at least 2.5 or 3 times the width of each dumper to be safely driving these dumpers in that ramp. We can also sometimes ramp width is also dictated by the overall slope we want to keep. If our bench height, if we are our bench face angles are more, and and we sometimes want that we have to basically decrease the overall slope angle. So that time ramp is widened sort of so as to overall slope angle can be reduced. And these are a few factors that decide how geometrically a slope is affected. Uh, Very intuitively, we can see that higher slope angles will be difficult to stabilize or keep stable. And now the basic reason which we saw yesterday was how the cohesion or and the friction angle dictates the strength and and how stable can material be when it is dumped at certain angles. Other factors that in the mine we can have our rock strength that we'll be talking about, some water pressure issues if there is a water pressure buildup. So often the problem of groundwater, because uh, when we are working in open cast mines, we basically go deeper and deeper than the groundwater level that is existing in that area. So it is natural that groundwater pressure will be there. And if there is no outlet for that groundwater to release its pressure, basically if there is no way that that water is drained, so that the hydrostatic pressure keeps on building up. Now again, in terms of forces, if we see hydrostatic pressure is basically a force that is working against the stability of a slope. So higher the hydrostatic head or the higher the hydrostatic pressure, the more the chances of instability or failure of the slope. So if in case this is the scenario where hydrostatic pressure is being built up in these sense, so a good practice is to make drainage holes, and drainage holes are generally done when by drilling horizontal or inclined holes throughout the bench inside the slope, and so that the water that is being accumulated can be drained slowly and the hydrostatic pressure is reduced. Also, the damage of the slopes due to blasting now generally is speaking, especially in the near surface or the shallower part of the mining operation, the uh, the blasting is practically just next to what our benches are, where our benches are. So initially it is considered that these benches will have effect of blasting on them. However, as we go deeper and as the pit widens, the planning of the mine is such that these benches are made in as far and away from, or it is planned in such a way that the active blasting sites are away from the benches that we have to protect for a long term of time. So based on what kind of design is there, what kind of expansion we want to make in our mines, or what kind of dimensions of the mine lease area are there. So in that sense we can dictate, okay, this is the areas or the benches that we have to keep for longer amount of time, and so they have to be more stable, so the active working area will be farther away from them. So if blasting is damaging, so we have to also take additional care or additional measures of maybe uh, cutting off the friable material so that it doesn't fail later, and do other remedial measures so that the failure cannot happen in a accumulated manner. Moving on, ahead of geometry, we have obviously the rock or material properties that are there. What kind of material is there? Its strength. What is its strength? So generally, strength is measured in terms of compression or tensile terms. Uh, so if we have a sample, we can bring the samples from the mines, and we can test them under UTMs or the uniaxial testing machines to find their strengths. And based on what strength is there, what how much load it can hold. Uh, its stability is one of the major dictators. What is the sieve size or the size distribution of the rock or the material that is there? So, uh, in terms of rocks, if we talk about the size, is generally dictated by the geology of the region. So, what is the joint orientation, and as I said, what is the separation between the joints, and how many sets of joints are there, and other discontinuities. Basically, those are the dictating factors which give us an idea of what will be the size of rocks. When it comes to or maybe dumps and ash slopes are there, waste slopes are there. So in that sense, what kind of size is does the size distribution dictates a lot of it dictates how good a compression can happen in that sense. So a very simple example is if we have many tennis balls and if we have sand. So the level of compaction, because of the different size of particles, the level of compaction between sand particles and the level of compaction between tennis balls will be very much different. And similarly, if the material of that comprises the slope is very chunky and large, so the level of compaction between them will be less as compared to very fine. However, if it is mixed in certain proportions, say larger sizes are 20%, then 60% are mediums, and fine particles are another 20%. So those combination also help in giving good compaction characteristics. So knowing what kind of size distribution of that material is there gives us an idea of how the properties of that material will change. Even the strength of a same material with uh, different sizes, the grain sizes changes a lot. Same sandstone will have overall different strength if it is in powder form, while it will have a different strength if it is in a pebble or rocker form. So size distribution or the size or the grain size matters a lot, and that is mostly measured by sieving operation. Like you might have been exposed to this in your labs, rock mechanic labs. So different size of sieves are there, and each sieve has a particular sieve size. So beyond that, it doesn't allow it to go down. So each material is filtered in these sieves, and measurement is done on what is the weight of material retained in each sleeve and sieve size. And based on that, we can give a good idea of how um, size is distributed throughout. Coming to cohesion and friction angle, as we were discussing yesterday, one of the major contributors to the shear strength aspect of it. So this when we talk about shear strength, we talk about mode of failure where uh, there is a sliding or a shearing motion. So uh, most of the slope failures, if it is not along the joints or it is not wedge or planar failure, most of the failures happen due to the in slope failure scenarios. Most of the failures happen due to shear failure. So shear failure is basically uh, two planes or two materials moving with respect to each other in contact with them. So sliding or shearing away. In this case, we have to rely on the shear strength of the material. And as yesterday we were seeing, the Moore-Coulomb failure criteria is one of the major criteria that decide what is the shear strength of the material. We will be coming to that also in our slides. So shear strength is dictated by cohesion and internal angle of friction. If you see this figure on the bottom right, you see these circles. These are called Mohr circles, and the blue line is called Mohr envelope. We'll be discussing this as well later on. So when these circles, basically when we find by triaxial testing, when a material is given to uh, uh, when the material is given stress on three sides. One is confinement stress, and one is the main breaking or the principal stress. So in different confinements, the amount of force or the stress that is required for a material to break changes. And based on that figure, we get we can calculate how what is the C cohesion, what is the internal angle of friction of a material. In rocks, it becomes easier because intact rocks can be found. In soil or a mixed sort of scenario where gravel is there or overburden material is there, we have to find representative samples or the representative size fraction, so that we can give it a correct value of C or phi. Because it's simple to understand that the same material when crushed, very fine, will have almost nil or very low cohesion and very small value of friction angle. While the material, if it is in a rock form or a bigger form, will have superior properties in that sense. So when our dump material or a material that is blasted out, or it has different types, different sizes, when that kind of material is studied, uh, a technique is used where we give it representative weightages. So a big, if based on the size distribution analysis, if we have suppose 30% 30% large chunks of rocks, 20% fines, and the remaining in between. So a weightage is given to each of these, and individual cohesion and frictions are determined. And the overall value of this material will be based on what we obtained from each of these three different size of the same material. So when we will be doing maybe certain projects are there that we are also working on. So when we will be doing certain projects, you will be doing certain analysis on these lines, some rock mechanics lines. You will also understand how things work. There are other geotechnical parameters, uh, especially applicable to slopes that are for friable or soil or mixed type of materials. In this, basically, what these are called Atterberg limits. Atterberg limits are dictating how a material behaves when we start increasing the amount of water content inside. So in in terms of large intact rocks, this is seen in terms of a test called slake durability. When we dip some rocks in water or similar solutions, and we see how durable it is after soaking it for certain amount of time and giving it certain stresses. So in that sense, rock can be analyzed, but a soil or a soil-like material, like a overburden material or the blasted rock material or tailings, these kind of materials they cannot be tested like we do for rocks. So for these, we basically start increasing the amount of moisture that is present in that material. And as we increase the material, it behaves differently. Sometimes in the start, it will be keep on, the volume will actually start reducing. If you are familiar with some cooking, so you will see when you mix some water into, maybe when we knead a dough, जब आटा मारते हैं, and we put some water, so the volume of the atta that is there, the flour that is there, वो थोड़ा सा कम होता है, that reduces a bit. And that is the same principle when water is added to these granular particles, even in sand, even in clay. even in fly ash I was working. So when you introduce water, basically the gaps start contracting and get filling up with water. And as we increase the water further, the volume will keep on increasing and will reach a point where basically the material will start behaving as a liquid or or a plastic. So these limits where these things happen are called plastic limit, liquid limit. So these limits are also calculated using various tests, but these are important parameters that basically represents or are affecting the slope stability. Moving on, we have hydrological properties. So in terms of hydrology, if you say uh, water creates, as I was saying in while discussing about the open pits as well, water is a special issue. Even in open pits, even in rocky benches, even in dumps or ash ponds or something like that. Uh, when water interacts, the properties of the material totally change. And the reason behind it is simple. When we start mixing water, the water basically fills up the gaps or the pores inside. If intact rock is there, this effect will be slightly limited. But if there is a fractured rock, the water can go into the fractured rock and create instability. Or if there are maybe clay layers as infilling in the fractures, the clay can be basically diluted inside, and smoother fracture plane can happen, and that can create further instability. In this kind of scenario, soil kind of scenario, water actually goes inside and creates a saturated zone. So in ground, if we see, there is already a groundwater table that below that the material will always be saturated in a saturated state. But when we make dumps or when we build some sort of storage structure over it, more amount of water gets accumulated in that, and the zone that you are seeing the between the saturated and unsaturated zone uh, is basically a zone where the properties of the unsaturated or the soil or the debris basically changes that time. And due to this change, the mechanical properties such as strength, such as cohesion, friction, they all tend to reduce, and that creates much more instability in the whole system of slope. There are two things which are worth noting and often confused, and are hydrological properties of these granular as well as rock materials. So these are called porosity and permeability. So uh, how much time we have? Okay, so in terms of porosity and permeability, porosity basically defines the ratio of void spaces that are there, the voids that are between the particles of a rock or granules of a debris to the whole volume. So basically a quantification of the amount of empty spaces that are there, or the amount of spaces that are filled with maybe some moisture or some gas. However, porosity and permeability, though related, are very different things. Permeability is something that defines the ease with which any liquid or any fluid can flow through it. It can be water, it can be gases, it can be anything. So if to get a good idea how material is in these cases, you see this figure. In this figure, on the left side, you see there are no porous spaces, while on the middle there are some porous spaces, and on the right there are porous spaces that are connected with each other. So in in all these three cases, there are different properties of permeability and porosity. So first case, the material is neither porous nor permeable, so very hard granites, and even those are slightly porous, but very non-porous or very non-permeable material. These are generally found in terms of sills, above which there is an aquifer generally placed in underground hydrological aspects. So non-porous, non-permeable, and when we move to the middle part, it is porous, but it is non-permeable because the voids that are there, these are not connected, and until there is an interconnection, though, there will be no movement of material or no movement of fluid. And when the permeability increases, the voids gets connected, and that basically allows water to flow through. In terms of stability of a slope, both of these cases can and cannot lead to an instability of a slope. If suppose we have a layer of material that is totally non-porous and non-permeable, it may not be allowing water to penetrate through the material. So it can be maybe start building hydrostatic pressure due to that, because it will basically create a containment zone due to the non-porous and non-permeable aspect. So that can create more hydrostatic pressure and more instability. But on the other hand, if it is very porous and very permeable, sometimes water can seep through and go to the lower layers where it can affect the clay layers, it can affect the weaker material and reduce its strength, as we were talking before. So these are important parts in terms of hydrology. And finally, external forces such as movement of machinery, movement of heavy vehicles, and blasting vibrations, these all affect the stability of the slope to a certain extent as well. So before coming to criteria judging failures, because that will take time, what I will do is I will open the floor for any questions if you have for a few minutes, 2 minutes. If any of you wants to clarify anything what we have discussed till now in the factors that are factors that affect the slope stability, we can have a small 2-minute break for that. Otherwise, we'll go for this criteria judging failure of slopes. Anyone has any? Yeah, Chintan. Yeah, please, Chintan.
Hello, sir. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yeah.
Sir, how rock beds will lead to failure of a slope?
How rock beds will lead to failure of the slope? So, what I was telling about in the last slide was uh, when there is a sill sort of material that doesn't allow water to basically pass through it, and if there is a dump kind of a structure, or the water is allowed through it to infiltrate it, and the water is basically getting accumulated inside the dump or inside that full slope. So in that case, what will happen is due to this hard non-porous band, the water will start creating the hydrostatic pressure, and due to that hydrostatic pressure, basically it is a opposing force or a force that will create an instability. So that is the reason many times that can also create some issues. But these are dealable issues because if we have this kind of a structure, we basically can create artificial drainage channels or artificial drains that can reduce this hydrostatic pressure buildup. So that can be managed. So based on what kind of issues are there, that can be solved out. Does that address, Chintan, your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Swati, yes, please.
Sir, which is a better case for considering the stability of a slope? Should it be the unconsolidated state where the where the rock mass material which is present is completely dry, or in the other case where it is slightly wet, which will provide us with a greater stability?
So, Swati, it is very case specific because just by saying that it should be wet or it should be dry, we can't decide on the stability of the slope, because as we were discussing, there are many other factors that are also affecting. Maybe what is the strength
Yes.
of the rock you are talking about? If it is a rocky strata, full rock, intact rock strata, what maybe it can hold itself irrespective of its level of saturation. While if it is a complete soil-like material or a dump material or a dump slope, it may be possible that the saturated material properties, the saturated properties will not be sufficient to basically support the whole dump itself, and that can lead to failure. Again, sometimes what happens is when there is a partial water intake, or as I was saying, when we in case we start increasing the water content in any granular material, starting phase is the compaction also happens. So fully dry powder like structure and slightly wet structures, they can also have different a slightly wet structure can be more stable in that case. I will give a very good example. This is with when we store fly ash, when we store dry fly ash inside a dump or a place of dump, so that basically has no strength at all because it's a total powder. But
Yes, sir.
what that's why what these companies do, they basically mix it with water before pumping. So they mix it with water, they make a slurry kind of material, and they dump that slurry into that pond. So what happens is the water starts seeping slowly and gradually down, and what remains is a hard mass of consolidated fly ash with certain amount of moisture content. So in that case, this becomes more stable. So again, just by saying how much water content is there, it's not a complete information that we can get. But yes, there are different cases which we can also consider with the water content or the moisture content to judge how stable can it be. Does that answer, Swati? Some idea
Yes.
you got?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you.
Indrajit, yes, please.
Sir, can you repeat the persistent part that is affecting the stability of the soil?
Persistence, you say?
Persistent of rocks in the first part,
Persist
geological.
Persistence of joint, right? So if you see a very good example is this figure. If you see C figure, if you, I don't know how quickly it will refresh in yours. So in this slide, the C figure, there are joints similar to very parallel to the orientation of the slope as well. So it could have very easily be a planar or a simple plane failure. However, you see how the joints are gapped. There are gaps between the continuity of a joint. So that discontinuity or the level of continuity of the joint is called persistence. So how continuous a joint is. If it is highly persistent joint. So what is persistence in English terms as well? Persistence means we keep on trying, or we keep on going for something, doing something again and again. Similarly for joints, what persistent means is how deeply it is jointed, the rock is jointed, or how the joint goes throughout. So when a joint is highly persistent, or it is a long sort of joint, as is in these figures, the main figure that we saw, the actual figure. So in that cases, the probability of slope failure will be greater, while as compared to similar conditions where the persistence is less. Persistence basically, more the persistence, higher is the chance of uh, that plane becoming a failure plane. However, again, as I said in other answers, just persistence is not the measure of stability, because as you said as we saw in even geological terms, there are so many factors, like orientation is one of the major factors, infilling, roughness, aperture size, spacing. So yes, understanding persistence, what it is, very good, but only persistence, knowing persistence, and then saying maybe it is more unstable or more stable, that will not be. Did you get what you wanted, Indrajit?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I think we already have reached our time limit. So what I will do is I wanted to cover the next section, but let's do that maybe in next class. So what we will be doing in that is we will be discussing what are the judging criteria like factor of safety, critical strain, other factors, and we'll be doing some examples as well. So if you have any other questions, please we can discuss it now, or we can end the class today for now here and carry on with maybe meeting you Monday. Sounds good. If any questions are there, I'm here. You guys have Gurai sir's class, right? Next.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
sir.
Yes. Who is it? Chat is there. Okay. Okay. Yes, please. Anyone has any questions, you can ask, or we can then end here. So thank you, guys. I think it was an interesting class. We'll keep on doing this. Rock slope technology is very interesting. So many concepts will be cleared. It is very closely related to rock mechanics, and very interesting when you come to know how slope fails and what all you can do to protect it and what all you cannot do to protect it. So yeah, just the second lecture. So I think excitement will build up as we go ahead. So thank you very much for coming today. May you have a good weekend. Rest. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.